Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast for Black Women Connect Vancouver. Girl, you know it. So I'm the founder of Black Women Connect Vancouver, which started in 2017. And Black Women Connect Vancouver is a collective of women who come to inspire, empower, and leverage our strengths and embrace our diverse experiences. It is a community where we can build meaningful relationships and celebrate the beauty of our Black womanhood. I hope that you enjoy it. Welcome everyone to our podcast, Girl, You Know It. Today I'm your host, Natizia.
And I'm Elle, your other host.
And I'm your other host, Vanessa.
And our second episode today will be about how are you connected in Vancouver? So let's begin.
Awesome.
How do you want to start? How are you connected in Vancouver?
I feel like I'm connected in Vancouver in a myriad of ways. One of the ways is obviously working with this organization, but one of the other ways I've been connected or kind of built connections was by going to concerts, was by randomly like greeting Black people in the street. I was just like, hey, what's up? We made it. Mama, we're here. We really made it. Successful. And then just like, giving folks a nudge. Largely now, at least I'm connected through the work that I do. But I did struggle for a while because the work that I did was in a space that wasn't for me. It was in the corporate world and a whole bunch of white people, along with a whole bunch of other people that are just not Black, and in particular Black women. And so I find that working in this organization, but also choosing to wait for the relationships with the Black women to kind of build over time and cultivate, has been really helpful. Yeah.
Nice. What about you, Elle?
Well, I feel like having grown up in Vancouver, it's been a different kind of path. Like you're like, oh, you see someone on the street and you say hey.
Yeah.
For some reason, growing up here, it was a taboo to not do that. You felt very pushed or weird or forced, and then if you did make that eye contact with someone and they didn't do it back to you, you're just like, oh, okay. So it actually wasn't until making the connection with you and Black Women Connect Vancouver that I felt more, I guess, confident to kind of push it and be like, hey, you know what I mean? But I've always, I feel like I'm a social introvert, and I kind of make friendships and relationships based on that one-on-one time. So I always say that my calendar is always full because I'm always we're gonna hang out one-on-one and catch up. We're gonna hang out one-on-one and catch up. And I feel like it's been a myriad of people. It's never been I'm only gonna have Black friends. The past year though has been very intentional in building up that network. But yeah, I feel like I've been very connected. Vancouver's not very big. You can go a very far and still bump into people that you know. So I love that. It's been fun.
Yeah. I would say probably about the same. Either meet people either at concerts or random things that were happening, or people sometimes would just actually stop and talk to you, and then you're like, oh, okay. Or I remember even when I won tickets to the Solange concert, and then I had gone, and everyone in the group chat was just like, oh, we can go on the Facebook group, and they were just inviting me to go out, and so I found that was really nice. I just felt like people were really welcoming in those kind of settings. But yeah, I think unless you intentionally search it out, it's really, really hard to connect. And I don't live downtown, so that also is a little bit of a barrier, because I feel when you are downtown, it's actually easier because, like you said, you can bump into the same people. You know where they're all hanging out. So I think that I am connected, especially with Black Women Connect Vancouver, but I can be more connected if I lived closer to the city. Yeah, I think the city creates more of that community base versus being spread apart. And that's the issue with a lot of Black people in Vancouver, is because we're so dispersed with all the different cities. We're not just in one area. We're not a dense population.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because a lot of the times when we're when I mentioned where are people in Vancouver, and even this question says, how are you connected in Vancouver? I think of it as Vancouver, and then like there's Burnaby and all of the other ones. But I think a larger part of why we're curious or don't see each other is because not a lot of Black people live in Vancouver, and that they choose to actually, or maybe it's because it's affordable out there.
Yeah.
But also I've heard that like places like Burnaby and New West do have like a community kind of centric thing, and I wonder if it would be, I guess the next step in like building community would be to go there and like maybe not spend your weekend downtown and like actually go into New West and in those places and see. But I don't even know what that looks like because everyone comes here to try and find community. So like I don't know how to balance that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, that it kind of makes me sad to think about having to go outwards to find that community. Yeah. Especially because, like, first of all, people go, I'm from Vancouver. And it's like, where are you from? They're like, Langley. I'm like, that's not Vancouver. I'm talking about Vancouver proper. Like, come on. Like,
and that's the problem.
I don't think I live in Vancouver. So, like, in my head, I would want to see those spaces. And, like, you know, that's kind of in reference back to, like, Hogan's Alley and, like, kind of having our own, like, community. Like, you know, South Asians, they may have, like, Fraser and Main Street. Like, there's, like, these little boroughs of, like, culture. And it's sad that we don't have our own kind of space. And even within Vancouver, there's, like, different little neighborhoods, like Kitsilano. Not Black people at all. Like, I lived there for years, and it was not great to make connections that way. And then moving to East Van and feeling like, wow, there's more. I can see more melanin. I can feel more comfortable in this space. So I don't know. I would challenge that. Like, I would want to keep pushing, like, with the momentum that we've had with this year and, like, the revolution and that kind of thing, to keep pushing for those spaces to be made in Vancouver, and, like, physical buildings and physical neighborhoods, just so people who, like, let's say, come to Vancouver as a Black person can have those touch-based landing points and not feel so alone for so long.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Even, like, growing up here, I felt alone for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. Sweet. Yeah. I think I'm very interested in what Hogan's Alley is going to be doing. And then with all of the placards that have been up again, I know they're working on a culture center or something like that. I don't know if Hogan's Alley is working on a culture center or someone else is. Once again, very confused about what everyone is doing. But I do see that there's an opportunity to come together and to build that kind of a community in Vancouver as well. I wonder, though, what has it been like for everybody within your relationships and friendships and, like, cultivating those with Black women? What have your experiences been in particular?
With them feeling that they feel connected?
Feel connected, or just, like, because in general, I always think of friendships like something that happens over time, and sometimes there's a lull in a relationship with somebody or a friendship, and you'd like meet at a concert, for example. This happened to me. I met a whole bunch of people at a concert, and then I was like, we're going to be great friends, and then there was like no communication afterwards. But it's something that you have to work for and that you have to earn, which isn't typical with like my non-Black friends that I've been in friendships with. So I just wonder if that's something you've experienced, or like if you have any, I don't know.
I don't know if I've significantly had that experience. I think there's maybe like one or two times, but like I'm like Elle, like I'm a social introvert. And so for me, even if I met like a group of people and they all wanted to hang out, it would still be a one-on-one thing. I don't think I would be like, invite me to your next group hangout. It would, I just search for intentional relationships, even if we're not gonna be like BFFs for life. It's still that intentional sit down, let me get to know you as a human being. And so I usually prefer that more, and I probably pursue that more. So I think I don't take offense. Plus also being so busy, I think it helps not to take offense. Because then you're like, okay, that's cool, I'm busy too. And then if you are a social introvert, you can be like, okay, cool, and move on. Let me just watch my Netflix. Yes. So I think for me, it hasn't been too much of an issue, but I do see where if you're actually looking for friendships, it would be a hard challenge, because then if people are flaking on you or not being consistent, that's hard. Yeah, so that would be a very challenging thing. So, I mean, that's also what we try to do with the creating space and events. And so people find their own relationships, something that's curated for them to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then how would you position yourself in like a network of Black women? Like being a social introvert, but like recognizing that we need those connections to kind of like not validate or Black women, but like to continue to empower ourselves as Black women and grow as Black women. I feel like it is important to still build upon those relationships. Like, how do you find yourself situated in those networks? I have found that like this, I'm going to keep saying it, this past year has been kind of monumentous because I wasn't intentional in having Black friends. Like, that wasn't my thing. I struggled with actually liking being the only one. It's a very weird thing to say right now, but like being like the only Black person and like kind of speaking to certain things, not as like authority, but just like a gatekeeper to people sometimes, and being like, you guys can't speak on that because you're not Black. I'm like, I'm not gonna engage with you. But recognizing that like the older I got, the harder it was to feel not necessarily connected, but grounded in myself without those key relationships. So one of the things that I found was living with a Black woman. That was huge for me because I hadn't done that before. And then kind of just learning how to be Black. And that was really cool, and kind of situating myself in that space. And then when I went to like other non-Black spaces, it was like, I'm more emboldened to be Black and not apologetic. And then the more Black connections that I made, it was like, oh, this feels not forced, and it doesn't feel uncomfortable, and I don't have to feel a little bit of shame that I would have felt like being my full authentic self with my non-Black friends, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You also have siblings that are Black.
How
do you think those relationships differ from like what you just mentioned now, the process of stepping into your Blackness and feeling more emboldened by pursuing Black friendships when you also have a Black family?
I mean, me and my sisters are very different people. I feel like they kind of stepped into their Blackness a lot earlier than I did. So for me, it felt kind of like a resistance type thing. And then once I like, not jumped on the bandwagon, but like really like flourished as a Black woman or blossomed, if I could say that, it felt like I could connect more with them, just because they're doing a lot of social justice work, and like that's how they pivoted them or situated themselves in their own networks and in their own journeys, in their partnerships and that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's weird because like we all grew up here, and it was like the whitewashing happened, and that's just what we had to kind of like deconstruct and process through, and I kind of got there late, so yeah, which is kind of unfortunate.
I think it happens when it needs to happen. I think the same thing, like for me living in Saskatchewan for a majority of my young teenage life, and then when I graduated moving out here, it was the same thing. I actually had to like get new friends and get a new community, and so I think for me that this is where the balance happened for me, whereas in Saskatchewan I majority did have white friends. And so, but that was just because that's what the population looked like. It does actually look completely different now, but it's just very interesting to see and to hear another perspective about that when you grow up in a certain community, and that is the biggest thing. It's like you just have that in front of you, so of course that's what you become your surroundings. And so like relearning that and deconstructing, I think for me it wasn't necessarily deconstructing, because I think I was always just happy to be Black, but I was also really happy to be African, and I think that helped, that correlation, because I was also going back to be able to go back home and visit. And so you can kind of ground yourself into like who I am, this is my community, and you're not a minority when you go back. And so it's like coming back, you're like, you remember like, oh, okay, this is what I intentionally want my life to look like in my relationships. And so I think that's what helped me to be able to do that. And actually it's very interesting. I think I've always just had multicultural friends in different races and ethnicities, but yeah, I'm noticing now I actually do have a majority of Black friends, which is interesting. Actually, it's actually not weird. It's just like interesting that like the shift happens when it happens is what I'm trying to say. So I also don't want people to feel like pressured of like, I don't have Black friends. Like I only have white friends. And like, that's still okay. It doesn't make you less Black or less this, or you know what I mean? And so like we're diverse in our backgrounds. So it just will look different for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can resonate with what you're saying about being African, and then also like being black and being raised in South Africa as well. You have the opportunity to have the reverse happen. That's here. There's a majority, black folks, and then here is the reverse. I think what was really interesting for me when I moved here is that the friends that I made were based on the environment that I was in. Yeah. And so when I was a nanny, a lot of the nannies that are here are like very like different. There's like Filipino women and there's like Europeans and then there's like South Americans, like a whole bunch of different people. And I was like, oh, this is cool. But the relationships are very superficial because we're focusing on the children. And then I started working in corporate and all of the people that were around me were majority white. And, then that became like my friend network. I think for me, the big transition was leaving my corporate job and then noticing like, oh, these were just people that were friends because we were in the same environment, and then being intentional about choosing who I want to bring into my space. And it happened simultaneously with the whole like BLM thing rising up again and, everything happening. And it wasn't like I'm like, oh, X-nay, white friends or whatever the case is. But right now is such a tough time for me that I don't want to have to explain why it's a tough time. I want to rather have an opportunity to be with people who understand me and who get me and who don't need a lot of explanation because they know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's why I now have, I think, majority like yourself black friends, and it's a very interesting thing to do, to be intentional about that. And I felt kind of guilty to be intentional about that as well. Then I think of all of the friends that I had back home and they were like all black friends, and I was like, I wasn't even like yearning for white friends or not. Like it's a very different battle, and I don't know how to reason with it in my head. So I'm like, am I being mean? Am I being prejudiced? Or like, is this just something that's comfortable for me because of who I am and where I come from? So yeah, it's been quite challenging.
So it's so funny. Two things. Number one, I forgot that sometimes I forget that I'm African because
I know. When I said it, you were like, "Oh yeah, I can see the click."
I always forget only because I was born and raised here. We don't go home. Like I'm Kenyan, and we don't go home to Kenya like very often. As in, like I've only been back once, so it's hard to situate myself as like, oh yeah, like there's this whole other perspective or part of my identity that lies in like this population that is all black. And I went back when I was 12. So like that's like decades ago now, you know what I mean? So that is huge. And I'm like, oh, mind blown a little bit. Number two, to your point about, being intentional about like who you draw in or who you like decide to share space with. I also want to recognize that I do have a lot of non-black friends who get it and who are doing the work so well. Like to the point where I sometimes lean on them for like stuff that come up. And I know that I have like one really good friend who like every time something has happened for BLM or whatever in the States, she's messaging me like, hey, how can I support you? I want to be here for you. She's done the work. So there is that balance of like, yes, surrounding yourself with people who look like you, but also there's a lot of tension with having a lot of people who look like you surrounding you, but like also not doing the work, right? Like in terms of like managing, perceptions and like their own anti-blackness that they've been socialized and have to process through. So I just want to like put that out there. I just want to like, 100%. I don't want to be like, I only have black friends. That's how it is. It's like, no.
100%.
Yeah, I think we all feel that. No, we all feel that. Yeah,
100%. Like I'm not being like, oh, don't ever have any.
I think it's just a different transition right now for us. Yeah.
And you have to be doing the work. Like even my, close, intimate people that I hold them accountable. And I'm always just like, okay, cool. Well, this is a thought that you have, but remember where we are. Like contextualize yourself, because sometimes we talk about comfort or sometimes we talk about success as a Black community here, given what we've gone through, what they've gone through. So that's also a really weird thing. Like, am I the Black community that's here? Can I talk about me being part of the history? Yeah. Can I be like, what we went through, but really I didn't go
I know,
through.
I hear you.
Like, go through something else. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But, you know, being able to contextualize yourself and be like, cool, we can make these strides, but we're living on stolen territory, right? And so comfort is different. And for me, I feel like that's where a lot of my conversations are going to as well. It's like, cool, so you're woke here and you're woke here, but like, are you woke here too? Because like it's a whole thing that you need to juggle, but it's a lot to juggle as well. And so... yeah, COVID's kind of kept me just staying in my house. And I'm like, I don't need to talk to people. I don't care what other perspectives are. I know what I'm doing. It's hard.
So let's talk about accountability. So we talked about friendships. We talked about we haven't really talked about relationship, but just other relationship, work, friendships, I guess. It depends. Some people are close to their friends, but don't go out with their friends, work friends. So, but yeah, let's talk about accountability in the community. If you're trying to connect in Vancouver as a Black person or a Black woman, how do you keep people accountable? What are ways that you have been doing that?
I think it's really different depending on like who your friend is and what the nature of your friendship / relationship is as well. I think for myself, the one way that I've noticed my brain tries to keep me accountable is I will overshare with people and I'll be like, hey, oh my goodness, I'm going to do all these 27 things. And then people will be like, oh, where are you with this thing? Where are you with this project? And it helps and it also harms me in terms of that accountability practice. I need to refine what that looks like. But that's what it is for me. Like I love sharing what my ideas are with other folks and then giving them space to hold me accountable. So like I won't ever lash out and be like, oh my goodness, how dare you? This was said in privacy. Like, why are you using it against me? Like I'm not dramatic.
Sometimes. Lies.
The lies.
We're just...
You can cut that out. I'm not dramatic. You pick up on that line. I'm not dramatic. And you can't even finish it next. I forgot. It made me laugh. Oh yeah, accountability. And so it's just a matter of figuring out like who's going to be accountable for you, what their skill set is as well, but what's their like mode of operation. Because for me, my accountability, as you will know, comes from chatting. Like if I don't like something, I'll talk about it. And Natasha rolls her eyes at me sometimes, and I noticed it even yesterday. I was like, okay, cool, I'll keep quiet then. But yeah, I like absolutely verbalize it and chat about it because that's the best way for me to get to somebody. Whereas harboring it and like festering it and being like, oh, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't play benefit of the doubt anymore. Like in as much as I will go out to prove myself to you, you have to do the same. Not in a like a cheap, inhumane way. But that's the one accountability. The other accountability that I would like is somebody who plans self-care things with me. So like if COVID wasn't happening, but like the spa day that we had planned, that would have been absolutely amazing. Going for a picnic that we did that last time as well. But just to have somebody external to myself to like be that nudge and be like, hey, let's go for a walk, let's go for a picnic, let's go for this, have you taken a break? And like that encouragement to take care of myself, because I absolutely override it with everything that I've told that I'm going to do. So I'm just trying to like play catch up in some ways as well. Yeah,
no, that makes sense. And I think for me, I'm also like, I'm a verbal processor. So it's like, I do have ideas in terms of like the same thing where it's like, I have all these things that I want to do, but I'll keep them to myself until I want to execute them. But then I also just, if like a problem happens, I have to verbally process, and I'm like, find someone. It's like either my sister or my friends. I'm like, you already know that I need to process verbally, so I'm just letting you know. I don't want you to fix my problem. I just need you to listen. So I understand that, but yeah, I get nervous to share things that I want to do because I'm scared of people asking me when I'm going to do it, because I want to do it in my own timing and I want to do it well. I never want to start something and it's a mess. And so I feel like anytime people force something to do like happen, then I'm like, I feel like I'm catching up to do something I'm not passionate about. If to me, if passion isn't behind it, if integrity isn't behind it, I don't want to be behind it. There's no point, because I don't function behind just a lull of just doing something just to do. So yeah, I definitely struggle with that. So I'm trying to find that balance of like, telling people so they keep me accountable. I'm like, Natalia, what's your next step? But at the same time, also be like, I want to protect this part of me till I'm ready. So it's a hard balance. So I understand. Yeah. But I am the same with the self-care thing. Like because I like the one-on-one thing, I do want when people are like, oh, like, let's do this. Let's just hang out. Let's just be chill. Or yeah, let's go to a winery, or, you know, something that's like relaxing. The atmosphere is like relaxing. And honestly, like the only reason I like going to wineries is because you're in the field and you're like in the middle of nowhere, and you just get to like, you get to have a picnic, you get to have whatever, and just relax with the one or two friends. So it's more of like a relaxing instead of sitting in a restaurant. So I find that really calming. So yeah, I get that. Yeah.
I feel like I'm really good at holding people accountable. I'm not the best at like being held accountable in terms of like openness to it, which is why I would kind of sit in your camp and go, I don't share what my plans are literally until I'm like, it's good to go. It's 90% like planned out. Yeah. I'm literally just gonna roll it out and then I share. Because I feel like there's this pressure to perform and be perfect. And that's something that I put on myself. I know like socialization of like Black women, but like I put this like high standard to myself. And then I think about it like, but I would never do that to like you. I would just be like, hey, how can I support you in getting to your goal? Like, you told me that you were going to do this, but for myself, like, I can't take it. So then I go, you know, no, I'm not going to share until, like, I'm ready. But I think because I've built a lot of friendships through my social, like, introvertness, I like being like, okay, like, what can I do to help you? How can we, like, like go along in the process? And I feel like that's been helpful, but I'm still on my journey and like being held accountable. I think the only people who can hold me accountable at this point without me like flipping my shit or still flipping my shit and like being like, okay with it is my sisters and being like, yo, but like you said, you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Like, where's the action behind it?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, it's coming from a place of love, and I know that you're gonna love me all the time, and I'm gonna love you all the time, but like, damn.
Yeah.
And also,
okay. Totally.
Okay, I gotta do it.
It's hard. It's hard when someone tells you, like, these are the things that you should be doing. Can you do better in this area? Because, yeah, and it's also like, and then when people are like, do you not like being vulnerable? Like, no. Like, does anyone sit there being like, I love vulnerability? Like, yeah.
And like shredded.
Like, and so I'm just like, what is this question? Of course no one likes it. So, yeah, I definitely struggle with that.
So since we've both spoken about requiring, and even yourself, Al, requiring that level of nurturance and that level of care, how do we do that for ourselves if we can't find other people to be the nudge? How do we nudge ourselves?
That is a great question. That is the question of the year for me. I think I do not know how to ever do it. I think I just crash and burn and then try to pick up the pieces from the crash and burn. I honestly, self-care is something that I'm terrible at. Like, I don't know how to do it well. I like struggle with it in every way. Like from sleeping to eating properly to like, not seeing enough people sometimes when I should be seeing people, but I want to be alone, to like just working too much. I do have a problem with like overworking myself because I think I set this expectation of like, you need to do this, 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 and this. How are you going to accomplish it? And that's where my struggle comes in, because it's like in my mind, I have all these plans that I want to do. And then at the same time, it's like, if I don't take care of myself, how am I supposed to do these plans? Sure. Yeah. And so that's where so it's like this cycle I constantly seem to be trapped in. And I'm trying to figure out what my self-care looks like. I think like post-accident, I was running a lot, I was working out, I was doing a lot of that, and now I can't really do any of it. And I think that's where the struggle comes in with me of like, how do I do self-care now when everything was so physical? So I'm learning to turn that into like a mental self-care, and I just don't know what that looks like yet. So yeah, it makes it hard because it's like, as we talk about how do you connect in Vancouver when so many people are like, we're all going to do this yoga thing, or we're all going to do this like physical thing, and I'm like, well, can't join, but like if anyone wants to do like a mental self-care event, I will come out. So I think that like that's something that I want to find, or I mean maybe I have to create it too, but like it's just I just don't know what it looks like yet. So that's just something that's hard for me right now.
I think for me it was it's been a hard letting go of like my perception of what self-care looks like, and feeling like I'm weak for needing self-care, which is wild. This year I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this step. I'm gonna start therapy. I'm gonna like be intentional about it. And I think having a third party who's not my friend, who I'm paying to parrot back what I'm saying, and then for it to sound ridiculous, of course it sounds ridiculous, and then be like, okay, now we're making action steps as to like how to deconstruct that like framework that is so destructive to your like operating system, has been very helpful. And as much as I was like telling people, oh, you should totally do therapy, oh girl, you should do therapy, I wasn't doing it. I was like, how? Like, come on now. So like starting it and being like, oh wow, this is really helpful. And like I'll like go into like an old tendency and be like, wait, like I know like a full on like action step to stop myself from getting to this point. And being more aware of how my body feels in times of stress. Like I would ignore it, and then it would be like, why am I having like trouble breathing? Like why am I feeling like I'm panicked? And then it's go, oh, you're overstressed. Like being able to like identify being in my body more, being more present has been helpful as like a self-care act. And then I've actually been in a group therapy type thing. So like furthering connections with other Black women and like our lived experience, and just hearing all the snaps, being like, oh yeah, we totally get that. Like, like just like you know it's true and you know it's real, but then also having a facilitator to be like, yeah, that's a real thing, and like how can we make a plan as a group to like deconstruct that and like tackle it on, you know? So that's kind of where I've been at.
That's awesome. That's
It's been really great.
Yeah.
Like I look forward to it like every 2 weeks. So everyone's like, go do it. No! Wednesday evening.
You say it in that voice.
I say it in exactly that voice.
Awesome.
You will
That
get
must
to
be
know
so
my
great.
voice.
That must be great.
So continuing. So when we talk about connecting in Vancouver, how do you approach other people? If you want to work with someone, you say they're doing great things, they want to be like, oh, let's work together because I have this thing, like, let's do this. And so how do we do that? Like, if I wanted to connect with someone else, like, how have you found the best way to do those connections? Yeah, like
Go to their events and then walk up to them afterwards and be like, hey, you're awesome, let's do this.
That's literally what you did.
Didn't you say you wanted me to do this? You said you wanted people. I'm the people. Honestly, though, and I think that's how I've made most of my new connections, is taking the initiative, because the worst that could happen is like they say no, and then they say no for the meantime because I'm that person.
Wow.
But like they say no, and then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, at least I know that like this isn't in my ball game. But rather than walking away and wondering, oh, do they still need help? Was this something that I could have thrived at and succeeded at? Is this a relationship that I could have built with somebody? But then also not jumping right to seeing everyone as this like automatic best friend, because back home we have like this, and I'm only saying Ubuntu because I was talking to one of my other friends yesterday and she kept like saying it, but we have Ubuntu, and Ubuntu means like my soul existence is based on your soul existence, and like everyone has this undercover, we want to make sure that you're at least good, even when we see you in the street. So that means greeting each other, because when you greet each other, you validate somebody's existence. That's why a whole bunch of homeless people start screaming, and they scream because they scream for attention. They scream for you to say, hey, I see you, you exist in this world, like you're a person and you're not a nothing. Do you know what I mean? And so that for me is how I've tried to bring it in here as well. That's why I'll greet people when we went to lunch. I was greeting all of the Black people that are walking past us. I was like, hey, what's up?
I'm like, do you know them?
Like, nah.
She literally would like wave. It's like, hey. And then we're like sitting on the patio, hi. And I'm like, what? but it's cute. I get it. It makes sense. Yeah.
Literally. And because for me, it's like I want you to feel like you're seen, because a lot of the times when I am walking in town, I do put my head down. I do feel like I want to wear an invisibility cloak and just be like, don't notice me because I'm just doing something simple. But when we see each other, I want to be able to bring people up and be like, hey, what's up? We made it. You know what I'm saying? Wherever you might be from, to be able to bridge that, because it also makes me aware that I'm not alone as an individual. A lot of times we deal with things on our own, in our heads, in our own houses, and we feel like we're alone. We feel like nobody's there for us. But when you're constantly talking and hitting those pings, like we're playing, what's that game that everyone plays now? And then they like go to a spot and then they're like, what is it? And then they're like picking up little Gobazors or whatever they're called.
Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go. It's like Pokemon Go, but it's like humans. So I'm just like,
So like
hey,
real life.
bing, 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 bing. And I'm like transforming you, Transformador, into a friend. But really, that's how I do it. So I just stalk people. I remember one of my friends, I stalked her on a bus. I was sitting in the front of the bus. She sat all the way at the back. And then I like slowly made my way to the back. I took my one earphone out and I was like, hey, are you South African? And she looked at me and she was like, yeah. And then I spoke in a South African language and she repeated back. And I was like, boom, we're friends. Yeah. Do or die, ride or die. Literally.
Do or die.
So let's go. And now we're still friends.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's hard for us introverts who like, because I cannot do that. I can't. And so I find that people actually approach me to be their friend. And the problem is being a social introvert is people in social settings think that you're an extrovert.
Like, you must connect with everybody.
You want to be my friend. You want to hang out every day. And I'm like, but no. But I do want to be your friend. So it's like this weird tension inside of you where it's like, no hate friends, but friends.
Yes.
So I struggle with that for sure. I think that most of the friends that I've made actually came up to me and became my friend. Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. But I also kind of, when I do want to, like, there are times where I do see people, I'm like, I really want to be their friend, like, be my friend. And so that makes it hard because then I'm like, how do you do this? And then I don't know what to do. But then I also, like, at the same time, I like to observe people and their character and stuff, like how do they walk and stuff, because I feel like at this age, I'm just looking for intentional friendships. So it's like, I don't want like friends that just like random coffee dates here and there, because to me, that's more exhausting. Yeah. So I think that I'm just in that stage right now. Yeah.
I'm not I would agree 100% with you, but like in terms of like collabing, I don't feel like I'm there. Like, I'm not a person who's there to be like, I want to like work with someone. I want to do that kind of thing, just because I'm not like, I feel so nervous about that. I feel so like anxious about that. So my approach is nothing. It's just like, I like rely on people who be like, I think you guys would work well together. Like, oh, thank you so much. For making that connection for me, because sometimes it's just like, it's a lot of pressure and like,
that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, unless it's like, I want to work together, like the same thing is like, is there a drive behind what you want to collaborate with? Is there a passion behind it? Like, what is the purpose? I don't want to just do it just so we can get our names out there, because I don't work that way. I don't work to get my name out there at all. And so I think that as long as people have like a distinctive purpose and drive towards something, then I'm like, oh yeah, let's definitely collaborate, because that's definitely what I'm passionate about too. We may not be friends afterwards, but our drive is something, you know, like we're heading towards somewhere for the greater good. So to me, I'll always collaborate for the greater good versus just like, we need to do this for Black women. I'm like, yeah, for Black women, but like, how can we also make a purposeful thing for Black women?
I feel like I'm learning that critical lens from like our collabs, like just being like, do we want to collab with them? Do we want to work with them? Is it going to like elevate us in the best way possible? Is it going to like serve our purpose? Period. No? Then it's like learning how to say no to
yes, for sure.
And like for me at the beginning, I would have been like, yeah, and then you're like, no. I was like, okay, I don't know, keep that in my head going forward. Learning.
And sometimes a no right now just means a yes later, right? It's just like, in this time, we're just not maybe set up for it, or we're just whatever. Like, this is not where I'm going. I think the biggest thing for me is like, what is mission drift, right? Like, we all have our lively, like whatever we live our lives, like we all have our own mission statement that we live out in the world, and then we also have the mission statement of Black Women Connect Vancouver. So what does that look like, right? So that's what I always go about, like, what is my mission statement? Does this person, they want to like collaborate with me, they want to work with me, but what is my mission statement? What is their mission statement? Do our values align for us to work together, right? And that's just how I always go about it. I'm like, if our values don't align for right now, then it's like, okay, well, let's talk about this in a year from now. And if it's just in general we'll never align, it's just like, I just don't think I'm the person for you, but let me refer you to blah, 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 who's doing the same thing as you. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think a lot of the times for myself, I entertain people so that it's not just their... Like if somebody sends me an email and they're like, oh, I want to do this with you, I want to collaborate, right? Given if it's a substantial email, it would... with my missions and my values and stuff. But, you know, if it ticks even one box, I'll give them an opportunity to like say what it is that they want to do. Because, you know, at the end of the day, even working as a recruiter, like not everybody's great at drafting an email. Not everybody's great at written communication, which is fully expressive, right? Not everybody has the, like both of you are saying, like, you know, that extroversion to be like, ha ha ha, I know all the things I want. So I do like to give people that opportunity, but it's also... it charges me to be with people, period. But it is also draining. And I think I'm noticing now how to make a better version of that, right? To be like, I will give you the opportunity, but like maybe you have to tick more than just one box now. You have to tick 2 or 3 of the boxes. And then we can go out and decide what it is that we are looking at. And I think that comes with also establishing our own personal value that we have for ourselves, right? Just like we saw with one of our teammates, you know, her personal value went up, but we were also like, girl, you're worth more than that. Do it. You know? And then like, amping that up will make other people be like, oh wait, you valued yourself at 30% last time, now you're valuing yourself at 120%. And it's like, yeah, because I'm worth it, because all that is required is for this and this to say that I'm valuable. Then everything else has to fall into line and fall into place. So that's been the biggest thing for me when I'm making relationships or connecting. But even when people DM me for okay, I have to say this because it's come up in my mind twice now. The worst thing that I hate is like when there's a post, either of mine or somebody else's that's doing really well, and then you get those folks in there that are just opportunists, and they're like, I do eyelashes, when the post is about something completely different, like a diet or whatever, or they're like, I do animation, I think you... I'm like, comments aren't a communication for me. I don't...
No.
Respond to comments like that.
Don't even look at comments.
I am fully open to getting DM'd. Like, I am fine. My platform's still pretty small, so I'm like, cool, DM me. I'll have time to respond to people. But yeah, I just don't. That drives me crazy, and I'm like, what an opportunist. That's so weird.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think there's just so many different ways that we can learn to connect in Vancouver, and how do we figure that out and try to navigate during this, like, Vancouver's such a weird city. It's also not friendly, you know? It's like when we go to Toronto or whatever, it's like you can go anywhere and you make friends. And it's like, next thing you know, like you're hanging out with someone. And so, or like meeting someone from a different country. I just feel like Vancouver sometimes isn't that. So I think what advice would you give people? Like, as we wrap up, like, what is a good way to connect in Vancouver? I think both ways. Like, so there's new people, like, so we've experienced, like, being new in Vancouver. You've lived here, but also being new, but then also you've lived here for a long time. How do you proactively get connected within the Black community or even as a Black woman? What is some advice that you've experienced?
As a Black woman? Oh, I don't know.
I feel like my advice would be to like exhaustively look. And I know that sucks to say and hear, but like exhaustively look, because if you don't, so many missed opportunities will happen. Like there's so many gaps. Like I've heard so many people, women, men, anything, say, I didn't know that this is here for like a year. I've been here for a year. And it's like how? So like search terms and everything, and just like continue your search until you find something that like falls into like alignment with your values and your mission statement and your interest and your passion. Because it's out there here in Vancouver, in the greater Vancouver area. It just, I guess, takes some time to find. Yeah.
I think my advice would be similar to Al's. Adding on to that is as you're exhaustively searching for other people, exhaustively search for yourself. And because when you find yourself, when you value yourself, right, in any encounter that you have something to offer as well. You know what you have to offer. And like that goes back to the thing with collaboration. Like saying, let's collaborate versus saying, I do all of this stuff. This is how I think I can help you in this moment is much better. And I can receive that because I know what it is that you can do for me. And I think that goes the same with relationships and like being part of the Black community is like, if you're trying to do something that stands out, what are you trying to do? Who are you trying to collaborate with and work with as well? But even in just individual relationships with people, know who you are, like deal with that like inner internalized anti-Blackness, anti-women, anti-class, all of these other things, and find people who are also doing that as well to match it up correctly. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's good advice. I think for me, the best advice would be, like you said, actively search and making sure that you're putting yourself out there. I know it's hard, especially if you are introverted, it's hard to put yourself out there in those settings. But then, like you said, knowing your worth. So it's like, am I worth getting to know, right? And so it's like, you will find it, you will search it instead of sitting at home being like, I have no friends, I have no connection, I have no Black friends. There are a lot of Black spaces out here and for all different things, right? And so there's a lot of Black artists out here and like, we're doing different event things and other things that are coming up. There's other people that are doing different spaces. So it's like, it's all there for you. You just have to look for it and actually like be proactive about it and be consistent, because it's one thing to be like, I need to look for blah, blah, blah. And then you go to one event and be like, I connected once, no one connected with me. You have to be sticking to it. Like there has to be a consistency because you went to one event, but okay. Like how many things have we all done once and we're like, we're never doing it again. Or we're like, oh, I remember I did that one thing 5 years ago. So be consistent in whatever you're doing. I think that that's always just the greatest advice is to be consistent in life and in your connections. If you want to stay connected in that community, I'd say consistency.
I like that a lot.
So anyways, that was a great discussion. Yeah, I enjoyed this. Yes.
Me too. Can't wait for the other discussion.
Oh no. So cheers.
Cheers.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
There we go.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's always amazing to get an opportunity to chat with these lovely ladies. So if you're looking to follow us off of the podcast and you're looking to catch up with some of the content that we have, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube, all at Black Women Connect Vancouver. And we also have a website for you at blackwomenconnectvancouver.com, which is where you can sign up for our mailing list and our newsletter so you can keep updated with our growth and all of the other events that we have planned for you. Catch you later. Bye.